Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Wise. Today we are going to look at the next lesson, that is position solving for improvement. In this topic, as we already know, we try to solve positions. We try to follow the techniques of solving the position, that is finding the moves using check capture attack and trying to understand the patterns or motives or ideas. So here we have the first position. Today's all positions are black to play. So this position is based on a mating pattern. So let's get started. Let's try to find the moves. So at first what we see, the queen and rook are trying to harass the black king. So the rook on e8 is attacking f8. Okay, and apart from that, if we see, not much difference happening on the white king side. Black's main attackers are queen and the bishop. Both are eyeing the h2 square. So whenever queen is on h3 and bishop attacks the h2 square, typical pattern is formed whenever queen controls f1. So the pattern requires that the f2 square is less supported than the number of attacks it has got. So here what happens, if queen h2 is played, then king runs away from f1 and queen h1 is not possible again because of the bishop. Queen h3 allows the king to escape outside. The power here is with the bishop on h2 that the king is unable to escape from f1. So it forces king h1. That is the power. We are able to force the king to the corner. And this discovered check which black will use is to create attack on the h2 square. So black's attack works because he is able to sidestep this g2 square and attacks h2 and the f2 squares. So the candidate moves here queen h2, bh2, rook e8, rook e8 is blunder. Queen comes to e8, any move like h6 allows the rook to be taken. So only bh2 and qh2 are decent candidate moves. So let's calculate. bh2 check, king h1. Now we want to attack the f2 square. So bishop g3, discovered check. King has to go to g1 and now the idea of bg3 was to get attack on f2. So queen h2 check, king f1, queen into f2 and checkmate. Let's play the moves and see. Bishop h2 check, king h1, bg3 check, king g1, queen h2 check, king f1 and queen f2 mate. So by doing these positions, we are trying to develop our imagination also. That is why I don't play the moves in the first attempt itself. Let's look at the next position here. Again it is black to play. We see that both kings are pretty unsafe. Okay, so the rook is guarded by the bishop, so white is threatening queen into bishop check, and knight g6 is still possible. So we can say that relatively speaking, side who will have the move will have a winning position over here. That much we can say for sure. The king has no place to move. Rook is guarding the 7th rank. Queen is attacking the bishop, and we see that the king is the defender of the f1 bishop. The problem is that the white king has no place to move, so that makes the sacrifice check very effective, which we have discussed many times before. Let's look at the moves quickly and see. Here we will see another mating pattern coming into action. Moves are queen into d4 check, rook h1 check and qg4 check. Also there is queen f1 check. From the look of the position, we can make that this rook is able to give only 2 checks. So the problem here is queen g4 fails to rook g4, qd4 fails to queen into d4, queen f1, king f1, rook check, then the king has a lot of squares. So rook and bishop will not be able to meet the lone king here. Only try remains the move rook h1 check here. King is overloaded, king has to take the rook when the bishop will be hanging. So the rook, king on g1 protects h1 and f1 both. So let's calculate for the rook h1, king h1, queen f1 check. King has no place on h2 because of the bishop. So there are 2 ways to block the check. One is rook g1. After rook g1, the queen is on f1, so queen goes to h3 and it becomes checkmate. So that white has to try the move bishop g1. So after the moves rook h1, king h1, queen f1 check, bishop g1, black still goes queen h3 check, bishop has to go to h2 and rook h2 mate. Do note that if you would have played queen f3 check to bg1, then rook g2 interposes, and after Queen h3 check, there is rook h2 and bh2 both. Let's play the moves and see. Rook h1, king h1, queen f1 check. If king rook g1, then queen h3 mates. If bishop g1, then queen h3 check, bishop h2, and bishop and queen both attack h2. So queen h2 mate. Although the bishop is pinned, queen is able to take on h2. After rook h1, king has place on g2, but then queen takes f1 and it's checkmate. King can't go to g3 because of the bishop. Here we have the next position. Black to play. We see that materially black is a whole rook down, but the white king is struggling for space. So in this lesson, basically I am trying to take different mating patterns, and we are also trying to develop our calculation, imagination, finding of moves. So the moves which come to mind are fairly easy. We have got qh4 check, which is perhaps the only candidate, because any other move will allow the rook to move and the king will go to g1. So queen h4 check, bishop h2. Now there is only way to attack h2 is the move knight g4. So queen h2 check and knight g4 were the only candidate moves. After knight g4, the queen attacks the bishop and the knight attacks the bishop. That is qh2 mate. White has no checks. So the only way to defend is the move queen f4. So that is the main position which we will try to imagine in our mind. So queen on h4, knight on g4, bishop on h2 and queen on f4. When we see both queen and knight attack f2 and both queen and knight attack h2. So the checks which come to mind, one queen h2 check, second knight f2 check. After knight f2 check, queen f2, queen f2. The bishop is holding the d6 pawn, and after the move like rook d1, it will be very difficult to stop the d pawn from moving. So it may not be winning for black, although queen against rook and bishop, but the d6 pass pawn is very strong. So black thought of the next move, qh4, bh2, knight g4, queen f4, queen h2 check. Note that the queen on f4 was overloaded, protecting f2 and h2 both. So queen into h2 forced, and then knight takes f2 mate. King is surrounded by its own pieces, and we have the smothered mate in a slightly different way. So qh4 check, bh2, knight g4, only move queen f4 to protect h2, queen takes h2 check, forced queen takes h2, and then knight f2 checkmate. Let's look at the next position here. Again it's black to play. I have tried to make this position from easy to difficult. Of course, it's not possible that everyone will find it the same way, because for everyone easy and difficult positions will differ according to their level. So let's have this position. It is somewhat complicated. There are too many candidate moves. Let's start getting with the moves, because we can see that the king safety is a huge problem. White king is having less space. So king has the only square on f1, but it is trying to, once it reaches f1, it will reach g2 and it will be quite safe over there. So bishop versus two pawns will be very difficult to convert in the queen endgame. So black should note that the king should not escape from f1. So the candidate moves which come to mind, qc4, stopping king f1, bishop c4, stopping king f1, and the move qc2 check. So let's calculate one by one. We know the method. The move which gives opponent least option, we see in that first. So if we try queen c4 check, we see that after qc4 check, king has e1 and d2, two squares. Then there is queen c2 check. Again there is king e1 and king f1, two squares. And then we have the move bishop c4 check, to which there is only one square, king d1. So what will we do? We will go into the move bishop c4 check first. It's not that every time that will be the right move only. So bishop c4 check, king has to come to d1, and now we see that amongst checks we have qd3 check, qa1 check, bb3 check again, and qb3. So many checks, but out of which again we will choose the most forced one. After queen a1, king has two places, c2 and d2. After queen d3, there is king e1 and c1, and we see that in none of the variations we are able to mate. After bishop c4, kd1, again if we do bb3, the king comes back to e2 and we reach the same position again. So what we note, bishop c4 will make us calculate more variations and nothing is coming out of it after bishop c4, kd1. So black can start with any of them because qc2 allows two places e1 and f1, qc4 allows two places d2 and e1. So after the moves, queen c2, king f1, bishop c4 check, kg2, we can't play bd5 because of queen into d5. So let's go to the move qc4 now. After qc4 check, king has choice between d2 and d1. So after kd2, queen c2 check, forcing the king to go to e1. Then qc1 check, again forcing ke2. If queen d1, then queen takes d1 checkmate. Queen on d1, king on e1, bishop on b3. So queen is on c1 now, king has to go back to e2 and bishop c4 check, and we see that all the diagonals are covered, queen is covering the whole right and it leads to mate. So after the move qc4, kd2, qc2 check, ke1, qc1 check, ke2 and bishop c4 checkmate. See another pattern with bishop and queen. So after the move qc4, there is one more variation, qc4 check, ke1, but we see that we transpose back to the previous line by the move qc1 directly and it mates one move earlier. Now qd1 allows qd1 mate and ke2 allows bishop c4 mate. Basically when we try to calculate the moves systematically and find the moves and see variations, it looks as though we are going to spend a lot of time. But in doing so, we will initially miss less moves by the opponent and for ourselves, and eventually with proper practice we will not miss moves for both us and the opponent, which will help us improve our game. Let's go to the next position now. The last position here, again it's black to play. We see the white pawn is about to queen, it has reached the 7th rank. But first we should note the king safety. The white king is struggling, it has only one place to move, that is on d2. Queen, knight and the rook all are attacking to the squares near the king. e2 and e1 guarded by the rook. Queen controls all the three squares near the king, including c2 also. So b1, c1, c2 are the main places and the knight attacks the squares c2 and d2. This position, although is not very difficult, but there are a lot of variations and it will be fun to calculate and look into each one. So the candidate moves which come to mind obvious, queen b1 check, there is rook e1 check, and there could be qc2 check or qa1 check as well. So let's get started again in the same way, the line which forces the opponent to have least moves. So that we will see first. So let's see, if we play qc2 check, it has only one reply, queen into c2, but we see that after qc2, knight c2, king c2, nothing happens. After qc2, rook e1, only other check, and after ke1, black has only the knight left, so with which he is unable to mate here. Let's look at the next variation, qb1 check. After qb1 check, there are only two moves, bishop c1 and kd2. And let's compare the other move now, rook e1 check. Rook e1, there are three moves, king e1, qe1 and kd2. Black went in the move qb1 first. So after qb1 comes bishop c1, and after bishop c1 again there is rook e1 check. qc2 again fails to qc2. So qb1, bishop c1, rook e1 check. When if king takes on e1, then queen into c1 mates. If queen takes on e1, then queen into c2 mates. Queen from b1 will take on c2 mates. And if king goes to d2, then queen c2 check is there. But to qc2 check, he can go king into e1. And then we have to calculate further. Queen attacks the queen, queen attacks the bishop, and the king is on e1. So queen takes the bishop, check, king can't go to e2, so it becomes checkmate. Let's compare the move rook e1 also. Since we got mate in the line QC1, many will say why to see in rook e1. Just we are doing it for practice. After the move rook e1 check first, we know that after k e1, the problem is now qb1 check. I am not forced to play bishop c1. I can do kd2 when the rook is absent. So qc2 is not met, king will escape from the square e3. The right way is first qb1 check. Now if kd2, then qc2 mates. So white went bishop c1 forced, and now comes the very strong move rook e1. So here there are three variations. If queen takes e1, then queen c2 and checkmate. King takes e1, then qc1, again checkmate. White played kd2, after which qc2 check, very important. If we play king c1 check, then king can go to d3, and after qc2 the queen supports c2. So qc2 check, forcing ke1, and when qc1 is checkmate. So it's not very important that we try to solve the positions fast. It's very important to be able to imagine the positions, to be able to find the moves, and to be able to see further. So I hope you are finding these positions very useful. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.